She slapped me in front of everyone, her own wedding day. The sound cracked through the hall like thunder, cutting the music mid-note. Faces turned, phones lifted. I felt the sting more in my heart than on my cheek. I didn't speak. I just looked at her, standing there in her lace and pride. That was my daughter. And that was the moment something inside me broke. The room still smelled of flowers and champagne. Hours earlier, I'd watched her dance, laughing with her new husband. The lights shimmered over them, gold and soft. For a few precious minutes, I believed we had survived everything. The years of fighting, the lies about money, the distance. I even gave her the pearl necklace my mother left me, telling her, "It's for strength, not decoration." She smiled, or maybe smirked. I can't tell anymore. The applause then had felt like healing. Now it echoed like mockery. Guests whispered, too afraid to meet my eyes. Her new husband stood frozen, one hand in his pocket, pretending not to see. My sister reached for me, but I stepped back. I didn't want pity. I wanted air. I wanted out. The carpet beneath my heels felt heavier with each step until I reached the glass doors. Outside, the night air cut through the heat and the perfume of the hall. It smelled like rain and truth. At the curb, under golden lights strung across the parking lot, I pulled my phone from my clutch. The ring on my finger, the same one I'd worn since my divorce, caught the light, a reminder of everything I'd endured alone. My hand trembled, not from weakness, but from restraint. I scrolled to a number I hadn't touched in 10 years. I pressed call. He answered on the first ring. "It's me," I said. A pause. "I figured it might be." His voice was lower, older. "She's done it," I whispered, "in front of everyone." He didn't ask for details. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. When I ended the call, I saw my reflection in the car window, calm, almost empty. I waited, arms folded, while guests trickled outside, laughing nervously, pretending nothing had happened. My sister tried again. "Helen, please, come back inside. Don't make a scene." "The scene's already made," I said. Time passed slowly, marked by the distant hum of traffic and the thud of music behind closed doors. Around 8:45, headlights cut through the rain. A black sedan rolled to a stop. The driver stepped out first, same broad shoulders, same stillness. He opened the back door, and the man I once swore never to see again emerged. His presence turned the air colder. 10 years hadn't softened him. A gray streak in his hair, a suit that looked too expensive for sincerity. He met my eyes with a quiet nod, then turned toward the hall. "Are you sure?" he asked. "She needs to see what she built," I said. Inside, laughter swelled again, as if nothing had broken. I stayed by the door, unseen, watching through the glass as he entered. The groom stiffened first. Then my daughter turned. Her smile froze. Her hand went to her mouth, and her face went pale. "No," I saw her whisper. "Not him." I didn't move. I didn't speak. The ring on my hand caught the last shimmer of light, the same light that once danced on her veil. The warmth of the day was gone. What remained was purpose, steady, cold, final. Silence had protected her long enough. Now it would protect me. He looked older, but his eyes hadn't changed. The lines on his face were deeper, but the same quiet arrogance lived behind them. The river behind him moved slow, brown, and tired, just like the years between us. I hadn't planned to ever see him again, but some debts live longer than anger. We met where the old bridge used to cast shade over the water. The air carried a damp chill and the faint smell of rust. For a moment, I saw us as we were back then, standing on this same path, arguing about blueprints, broken promises, and the house that never stood. I had lost everything when his company folded. He walked away richer. I walked away ruined. Now, after 10 years, I'd called him because I needed what only he could give: information. "You shouldn't have reached out," he said, leaning on the hood of his sedan. "I shouldn't have had to," I replied. "You owe me." He didn't argue that. He only opened his briefcase and handed me a sealed envelope. "Everything you asked for. Don't open it here. What's in it? Proof, and a little reminder of who financed your daughter's happiness. The paper crackled under my fingers. It felt heavier than it should. I walked a few steps away and stared at the water, my reflection shaking with the current. You mean the wedding? He gave a dry laugh. The wedding, the house, the accounts. Your name was useful again, Helen. Someone made sure of that. I gripped the envelope tighter. The paper edges bit into my palm. My voice came out quieter than I expected. She wouldn't. He shrugged. You always gave her too much credit. A car horn blared from the road above, breaking the silence. I didn't flinch. The warmth of memory felt like betrayal now. The last time I saw this man, he was signing away responsibility for the collapse that buried my savings. The settlement barely covered 1/10 of what I lost. That money had been my safety for old age, for dignity. Now it seemed my daughter's wedding had been paid from the same stolen pile. How did you get these? I asked. Old favors, he said. You'll see numbers that start small, insurance claims, transfer slips, but they add up. It was a quiet siphon. Your ex knew how to move money without noise. And my daughter? She married into it. I wanted to throw the envelope into the river. Instead, I slid it into my purse. Why help me now? He smirked. Because you're the only one who ever told me the truth, that I ruined people. Maybe this balances something. I didn't thank him. Gratitude had no place here. We stood in silence for a long moment, the only sound the hum of a passing train. He broke it first. You'll regret knowing the truth. I already regret not knowing it sooner. He nodded once, as if that answer satisfied him, then walked to his car. The sedan door shut with a final heavy thud. I stood by the river until its taillights faded down the road. The cold seeped into my bones, and the envelope in my purse pulsed like a heartbeat. When I finally opened it back home, the papers inside told a story written in $signs and betrayal. Transfers from my savings account, backdated over 2 years. Each payment funneled into an account under my daughter's new husband's company. Every zero mocked me. Every signature confirmed what love had blinded me to. Outside, the city lights blurred through the window. I could almost hear the wedding music still echoing in my ears. The dress, the flowers, the laughter, all paid for with what used to be my future. That night, near midnight, I lit a candle on the kitchen counter and stared at its small, steady flame. The warmth flickered across the envelope, throwing long shadows on the walls. I whispered to myself, the first boundary is silence, but silence won't last. Money tells the story no one wants to hear. That's what I kept repeating as I walked into the bank the next morning. The marble floor reflected my shoes, and the air smelled faintly of polish and ink. I had come under the pretense of closing an old account, one I hadn't touched since my husband left. The clerk recognized my name, smiled too politely, and disappeared behind a glass door. His hesitation lasted just long enough to tell me something was wrong. When he returned, his hands trembled slightly as he placed a folder on the counter. There seems to be some recent activity, he said. Recent? I asked. That account's been dormant for years. He nodded, eyes down. Transfers, significant ones, a few in the last 6 months. My heart beat louder than his words. I took the folder and opened it slowly. Line after line of numbers filled the page. Payments, withdrawals, electronic signatures. My name appeared neatly typed beside another signature, hers, my daughter's. The curve of her writing was practiced but not perfect. She'd forged me, using my credit to back her husband's company. I closed the folder, breathing through the nausea. Print everything, I said. Every page with my name. The clerk hesitated. Are you sure you want physical copies? It might... Print them. The printer hummed like an accusation. I slipped the papers into my bag, the edges cutting against my fingers. My savings, my safety, had been turned into collateral. Not stolen in the dark, but signed away in daylight. I left the bank with the folder pressed tight to my chest, as if holding it could stop time from moving forward. Outside, traffic roared. Somewhere, a clock struck 11. I stood by the curb, watching people hurry past, thinking how none of them would believe that a daughter could do this to her own mother. Betrayal always sounds dramatic until it happens in plain handwriting. By evening, I sat in my kitchen with the ledger spread across the table. The same pen I'd once used to sign birthday cards now hovered above a statement of fraud. I could still smell the ink drying from where I'd underlined her name. I left her a message, calm and clipped. "I know," I said. "You should call me before I decide what comes next." She called the next morning. I remember the clock flashing 8:32 as the phone rang. Her voice was shaking, or pretending to. "Mom, I didn't want this. Daniel made me do it. He said it was temporary, just until the merger." I didn't interrupt. I just listened to her bury herself in excuses. "I'll fix it," she said. "No," I replied. "You'll face it." Silence. Then a soft, mocking laugh. "You always make everything so moral, don't you? It's just money." That sentence cut deeper than the fraud itself. Just money. I looked at the stack of papers, each one a record of trust sold cheap. "You think this ends with numbers?" I asked. "You'll understand when you see the house," she said. "It's ours, Mom. You should be proud." The call ended, but her voice stayed. Proud. That was the word she'd used. Pride, not remorse. I stared at the ledger, at the signature she'd written over mine. The ink shimmered faintly under the kitchen light, still wet from her latest transaction. For years I'd believed love could outlast selfishness. I was wrong. Love doesn't survive unchecked lies. It funds them. The papers in front of me weren't just evidence. They were confession pages, signed in black and arrogance. I folded them neatly into an envelope and wrote one line across the seal: "To be delivered when the time comes." My hand didn't shake anymore. The next move wasn't about punishment. It was about reclaiming ground that was never hers to take. That night, as I turned off the light, I thought of her laughter. It wasn't nervous. It wasn't guilty. It was victory. Temporary, hollow victory. She ended the call with laughter. The house smelled of roses and rot. Everything inside gleamed. Gold frames, polished floors, even the air felt heavy with perfume. I didn't knock. I just opened the door and stepped into what my daughter now called home. My shoes clicked against marble that used to be my savings. The lights were warm, the kind that hides cracks instead of showing them. She appeared from the hallway in a silk dress I hadn't seen before. "Mom, you can't just show up," she said. Her voice was sharp but shaky. "I needed to see it," I replied. "All of it." Her husband stood behind her, hands in his pockets, smiling like a man used to winning arguments he never earned. "Can I get you tea?" he asked. His tone was polite, but his eyes said something else. Control. I didn't answer. I placed the folder of bank statements on the kitchen counter. "Explain this," I said. The paper edges brushed against my fingers, cool and stiff. She didn't even look at them. "You've misunderstood," she said quickly. "You're mixing things up again. You're tired." "Tired?" I repeated. "I'm not tired. I'm robbed." She crossed her arms. "You told me once you wanted to help us get settled. You signed those forms." "No," I said. "You forged them." Her husband took a slow step forward. "Maybe it's better if we discuss this calmly," he said. His calmness was worse than shouting. "You're not young anymore. Memory gets tricky." I stared at him. "Don't patronize me. I remember the day I built your world." He smiled. "And we're grateful, truly." "Gratitude doesn't erase theft," I said. The tension broke when the kettle clicked behind him. He turned, poured water, and handed her a cup. She took a sip like we were discussing weather, not betrayal. "Mom," she said softly, "you can't do this to us. People will think you've lost your mind." Gaslight. Slow, smooth, deliberate. I picked up one of the papers and held it close to her face. "Your signature sits beside mine. Your handwriting is wrong. You tried too hard to make it look careful." Her expression didn't change. You're seeing things. The mind fills in blanks. My throat tightened. I almost shouted, but stopped myself. Anger was their trap. They wanted me loud, unstable, emotional. I stepped back, placed the paper on the counter again, and said quietly, "You're not as clever as you think." The clock above the stove ticked loudly, each second heavier than the last. I looked at the wedding photo on the wall, her in white, smiling as if purity was her right. I'd framed that photo myself once. Now I wanted to tear it down. He broke the silence first. "Let's just put this behind us. Families shouldn't fight over paper." "That paper is my life's work," I said. "You don't get to rewrite it." She sighed, almost bored. "Mom, you're making a scene. Please go home, rest. We'll figure this out later." "Later means never," I said. Her husband laughed quietly. "You really should listen to her. Stress isn't good at your age." That line settled something final inside me. I straightened, took one last look at the room, and said, "I hope you enjoy what you've bought. Every inch of it is a lie." I walked to the door, leaving the folder on the counter like a mirror they'd have to face. My heels echoed down the hall, sharp and certain. When I stepped outside, the air felt colder, cleaner. Behind me, I heard her mutter something, maybe my name, maybe an insult. I didn't turn back. The streetlights flickered as I reached the gate. The sky was dim, that strange in-between color before full night. A clock tower somewhere struck 7. I stood there for a moment, breathing through the anger. I thought about the wedding photo, the polished counters, the lies wrapped in polite words. I wasn't going to fight them with emotion anymore. I'd fight them with proof. People like them mistake quiet for surrender, but silence, used right, becomes strategy. They thought silence meant defeat. Some truths need a folder more than a witness. That's what I told myself as I spread every document across my kitchen table. The bank transfers, receipts, printed messages, even the notes I'd scribbled on napkins when the numbers didn't add up. The room was silent, except for the faint rustle of paper. Each sheet held a piece of what they'd taken. I stacked them into neat piles, one for each lie. By the time the clock struck 9, I'd filled a manila folder so thick it barely closed. I slipped the clasp shut and stared at it like it was alive. That folder carried my name, my losses, my humiliation, but also my leverage. For the first time, I felt something close to control. The next morning, I took a bus downtown to the legal aid office. It was a cramped building, tucked between a pawn shop and a discount store. The waiting room smelled faintly of coffee and old carpet. A young woman behind the counter looked up as I entered, her eyes tired but kind. "I need to report financial fraud," I said. "It involves family." Her expression softened, but she didn't act surprised. "You're not the first," she said quietly. "Can you prove it?" I placed the folder on her desk. "Every dollar, every signature." She opened it, scanning the first few pages. "This might expose your family," she warned. "I'm aware." "Even your daughter?" I nodded. "Especially her." She slid a form across the counter. "Sign here if you want to proceed." The pen felt heavy in my hand, but my signature came out steady. As the ink dried, I realized I'd just turned love into evidence. When I left the office, the sun was high, and the city's noise hit me like a wave. A man nearby argued with a street vendor about a $5 overcharge. Somewhere across the street, a taxi honked at nothing. Ordinary life kept moving, unaware that mine had just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I stopped outside a small cafe and ordered tea. The receipt fluttered from my hand in the wind, landing near a trash can. I let it go. I didn't need it anymore. Some records weren't worth keeping. Others, like the ones in my folder, would decide everything. On the ride home, I watched people scrolling through their phones, faces lit by their own reflections. I thought about how easily appearances fool us. The right photo, the right smile, the right story. My daughter had mastered that. The house, the husband, the reputation, all built on money that wasn't hers. Back home, I placed the folder in the top drawer of my desk. I ran my hand over its surface once before closing it. The sound of the latch clicking shut felt final. I didn't feel guilt. I felt relief. They'd forced me into this. They wanted me quiet, ashamed, confused. Instead, I had written the truth on paper, one page at a time. At 10:15 that night, the city lights blinked through my window like tiny verdicts waiting to be delivered. I sat in the dark with a cup of tea and stared at the phone. I didn't call anyone. I wanted them to wonder what I was doing. Fear grows best in silence. Before going to bed, I checked the folder again, making sure every piece was still in place. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. Tomorrow, the investigation would begin. I whispered to the empty room, "You wanted to handle this like business. So will I." The folder lay on the table under the dim glow of the lamp, thick and patient, holding everything they thought I'd never find. I turned off the light and went to bed. Sleep didn't come easily. My body was tired, but my mind kept turning over the same thought. Justice is slow, but it's coming. The first act of my fight was over. I'd drawn my line, quiet but permanent. They could mock, deny, or manipulate, but the papers would speak when I didn't. The lawyer's call came before sunrise. He said the case could open a storm. Michael's tone was steady, but his eyes gave away the warning. He slid a folder across his desk, the same manila kind I'd carried days earlier. Inside were copies of forged invoices, transactions disguised as routine business payments. The letterhead belonged to a company my son-in-law owned, but the signatures were mine. I stared at the stamps, crisp and official, each one a small act of betrayal made permanent in ink. "They used your old insurance claim as collateral," Michael said, "the one from the fire, 15 years ago." My stomach turned. That money had rebuilt my life after everything burned. The house, the furniture, the years of saving every spare dollar. "They can't touch that," I said. "They already did," he replied. "They filed extensions through shell accounts. It's elaborate but sloppy." I looked at him, searching for any sign of hope. "What happens if we prove it?" "Then the fraud becomes public record," he said. "And once it's public, they'll lose everything." The thought should have satisfied me, but it didn't. Justice felt too slow for the pace of betrayal. I wanted exposure, not vengeance, truth in daylight, not a whisper in legal paperwork. Michael leaned back, tapping his pen against the folder. "We need to move carefully. If they sense you're going public, they'll retaliate, probably through money first." He was right. The powerful always attack through what they think defines you. For them, it was wealth. For me, it was dignity. The next afternoon, an envelope arrived at my door. Thick paper, embossed seal, expensive enough to make the message sting harder. Inside was a letter from their attorney, accusing me of defamation, warning me to cease all false accusations or face legal action. I read it twice, the words twisting like a blade. So they were afraid. That letter confirmed more than any signature could. I called Michael immediately. "They're moving fast," I said. "Good," he replied. "It means they're nervous. But don't reply to that letter. Let me handle it." "They're calling me unstable," I said quietly. "They want you to feel isolated," he answered. "Don't give them that victory." His calm steadied me, but anger still burned beneath it. 30 years of work, savings, pensions, insurance, turned into their playground. I'd survived worse, but this was different. This wasn't survival. This was theft dressed as inheritance. That evening, I met Michael at the courthouse gate. The metal bars gleamed in the late afternoon sun, and for a second, they looked like the bars of a cage. He handed me an envelope, our official complaint. "It's filed," he said. "They'll be notified by next week." What happens now? Now we wait, and we prepare for them to fight dirty. As we walked down the steps, he added, "This is bigger than family. There are others tied to these accounts, contractors, middlemen. If this opens, it won't stop at them." So it really could be a storm. "It already is," he said. When I reached home, the clock on the wall showed nearly 9. The house was quiet, except for the faint ticking sound that had become my nightly companion. I sat at the table, running my fingers along the edge of the sealed envelope. It felt like holding the weight of every lie they had built around me. I made a list of everything I could still control: documents, statements, contacts. My hands shook as I wrote, but not from fear. It was focus. Michael had told me once that truth doesn't destroy people. Exposure does. At midnight, I received another email from an unknown address. It was a single sentence: "You should have stayed quiet." I deleted it, but my heart raced anyway. The next morning, I went to withdraw cash for groceries. The teller frowned. "Your account appears restricted. You'll need to speak with your branch manager." Her words didn't surprise me. They confirmed what Michael had predicted. Power always strikes at the wallet first. I stood there, still and calm, while something in me hardened permanently. I left without saying another word. Outside, the morning sun hit the glass doors, and I caught my reflection. Older, steadier, unbreakable. They froze my bank account the next morning. My card was declined in front of strangers. It happened at the grocery store just before noon. I'd placed a small basket on the counter: bread, milk, and a pack of tea. $40, nothing extravagant. The cashier smiled as she ran the items, but when I inserted my card, the machine beeped and flashed red. "Declined," she said quietly. The man behind me sighed. The woman next to him looked away. Shame has a sound: small, sharp, final. I tried again. The same message appeared. "That's impossible," I whispered. "There's money in there." The cashier gave a polite half-smile, the kind people use when pity feels like courtesy. I took out a few crumpled bills from my purse, barely enough for half the total. "Just these, then," I said, sliding 2 items back across the counter. Outside, the air bit through my coat. The wind felt colder than it should have been, cutting through every layer. I stood by the ATM, hoping it was a mistake. When I slid my card in, the screen flickered before the words appeared again. "Account temporarily frozen." The letters didn't just mean loss. They meant control. They meant someone had reached into my life and turned it off. I knew who. My daughter's husband worked with the same bank. He'd found his way into my survival, just to choke it. I called Michael. "They froze everything," I said, voice tight. "I'll look into it," he replied. "Stay calm. Don't talk to anyone from the branch directly." "Calm?" I asked. "I couldn't even buy bread." "I know," he said softly. "That's what they want. To humiliate you in public. It's psychological pressure. I'll fix it." His voice steadied me, but the humiliation lingered like a bruise. I walked home through the drizzle, clutching my handbag against my chest. Coins rattled inside, a few quarters, maybe $1 or 2. Enough for bus fare, barely. I didn't take the bus. I walked. The rain helped hide my tears. At home, the house felt heavier, colder. I turned on the heater and stared at the unpaid bills on the counter. The power company notice lay on top, orange and bold, reminding me that everything runs on money, even silence. I made tea with the last bag in the box. The water tasted faintly metallic, like defeat. I took out my old jewelry box. Inside was one piece left, a bracelet I'd worn every birthday for years. Gold, thin, dented from time. I turned it in my hand, watching the way the light caught on its scratches. It was the last thing I hadn't pawned or sold. That night, I walked to a small pawn shop near the station. The owner didn't ask questions. He counted bills, slid me 2 20s, and nodded. I smiled as if it didn't matter. On the way out, I heard the faint hum of the refrigerator inside the shop, steady and indifferent. The world doesn't care about fairness. It cares about transactions. Back home, I folded the bills into an envelope and labeled it Utilities. I didn't want to forget how survival looked when stripped of comfort. I lit a candle and wrote down every deduction, every blocked payment, every call I'd made since the freeze. Each note became a form of resistance. If they wanted to crush me quietly, they'd fail loudly later. At 11 p.m., Michael called again. "There's an internal request logged against your account," he said. "It came from higher up. Looks like someone authorized a temporary hold claiming identity concerns." "Someone?" I asked. "Or him?" There was a pause. "It's linked to a private account manager who handles corporate clients. That's your son-in-law's division." I sat in silence. "So he used the system to starve me?" "Yes," Michael said, "but that means we can trace it. And that's good." He told me he'd start the paperwork to demand release of the funds. "We'll need proof of connection," he said. "I have receipts," I answered. "All of them." After the call, I opened my desk drawer and began organizing the pile of printed transactions. My fingers were stiff, but my mind was sharp. Every financial wound became evidence, proof not of weakness, but of the pattern. Control, manipulation, humiliation. Each act tied to the same signature, his. Before sleeping, I stared at the empty space on my wrist where the bracelet had been. Losing it hurt, but not as much as losing pride in front of strangers. Tomorrow I'd make copies of everything. Emails, printouts, statements. They thought freezing my account would freeze me. They were wrong. They didn't know I had copies. She came pretending to apologize. Her knock was soft, rehearsed. I opened the door and saw a bouquet trembling in her hands. "Let's fix this, Mom," she said, voice breaking just enough to sound believable. I nodded, stepped aside, and let her in. The smell of rain clung to her coat, sharp and clean, masking the rot underneath. She placed the flowers on the table, looking around as if she owned the space again. "You've lost weight," she said. "Are you eating properly?" "I manage," I replied. My voice was flat, steady. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and thought it was guilt. We sat across from each other, tea between us, the steam rising like something fragile. I poured her a cup. She smiled. "I've missed this," she said. I waited. False peace has a rhythm. It starts slow, then curdles. She began talking about the weather, the neighborhood, small things that used to fill our afternoons. I played along. My phone lay on the shelf behind the couch, its screen dark, recording quietly. After a few minutes, her tone shifted. "I heard you've been meeting with lawyers," she said casually. "I've been meeting with a lot of people," I answered. "About the money?" she asked. "The truth," I said. "About the truth." Her smile faltered. "You know how dangerous rumors can be. Dad says—" I cut her off. "What does he say?" "That it's safer if you stop all this," she whispered. Her eyes flicked toward the mirror behind me. She didn't realize how perfectly it betrayed her. Every twitch, every flicker of calculation. I saw her reflection clearer than her face. The warmth she tried to perform died there, replaced by something older, colder. I leaned back, sipping my tea. "I see," I said. She pressed her palms together. "I didn't come to fight. I just want things to go back to how they were." "How were they?" I asked. "When you believed silence was loyalty?" For a moment, she dropped the act. "You're making a mistake," she said sharply. "I already made one," I replied. "Believing family meant safety." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't understand how deep this goes." "I understand enough," I said. The room fell quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Outside, a car door slammed, and she flinched slightly. Guilt wears a visible face when it's cornered. She stood, forcing a smile again. "I'm glad we talked. Maybe you'll think things through." "I always do," I said. At the door, she hesitated. "You look tired, Mom. You should rest." "I will," I said. "I always rest after clarity." When she left, I stayed seated, staring into the mirror. The reflection was mine again, aged, calm, resolved. I picked up my phone and played the recording. Her voice came through, steady at first, then careless. "Dad said it's safer if she disappears quietly." I replayed it twice to make sure I hadn't imagined it. Each time, it hit harder. She hadn't come for peace, she'd come for reconnaissance, and she'd given me proof instead. I saved the file and copied it onto a small flash drive. Then I labeled it with one word: truth. I didn't feel triumphant, just steady. Sometimes power doesn't return with noise. It returns in quiet rooms with digital echoes. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, reviewing everything. Bank slips, letters, her voice now added to the pile. Michael's words echoed in my mind. Exposure, not anger. The phone buzzed. A message from her. "I'm glad we talked. Hope you're okay." I typed one word back. Fine. I didn't tell her I'd already forwarded the recording to Michael. I didn't tell her that her reflection, frozen in the mirror, had already betrayed her. I sent the file that night. By morning, the story was everywhere. It started with a headline splashed across every phone screen in the neighborhood. "Wedding empire built on stolen funds." The photo beside it showed a blurred image of an event hall, but the initials on the gate were enough. Everyone knew whose it was. The journalist had verified every document, each receipt, each forged transfer, every trace of the fraud I'd uncovered. He'd promised to keep my name out of it, and he did, but anonymity doesn't survive in small towns. By 8 a.m., my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "Is it true?" one message read. "Did you really expose them?" another asked. I didn't reply. I just watched the chaos unfold from my kitchen table. The morning light hit the stack of old newspapers I'd saved over the years, and for once, today's paper didn't feel like an ordinary day. It felt like justice printed in ink. On the TV, the reporter's voice carried a quiet thrill. "A large-scale financial scheme involving personal family accounts and falsified insurance claims has surfaced," he said. "Authorities are reviewing evidence submitted by a private citizen." Private citizen. That phrase carried weight. It sounded cleaner than mother, colder than victim. Calls from my daughter came next, 5 in total. I let the first 4 ring out. "The 5th one," I answered. "How could you?" she said before I could speak. "I didn't write the headlines," I said. "You gave them everything." "I gave them the truth." She started crying, loud, unrestrained. "They'll think I was part of it." "You were," I said softly. "Not by action, by silence." There was a long pause, and then the line went dead. I sat still for a moment, then turned the TV volume down. Reporters were already camping outside their house. Neighbors peeked from windows, pretending to water plants. The street that once admired their wealth now treated it like a crime scene. Power shifts quietly, but when it flips, it stings. Michael called around noon. "It worked," he said. "The investigation's reopening. Media pressure forced their hand." "They'll fight back," I said. "Of course," he replied. "They'll hire new lawyers, push the narrative of misunderstanding, but the evidence is clean. The documents can't be undone." I could hear typing on his end, papers shuffling. "The story's spreading fast," he added. "You might want to stay out of sight for a few days." "I'm tired of hiding," I said. "Let them see what they built." At 3 p.m., I walked to the market. It was strange. People moved aside as I passed. Some nodded, others whispered. A few avoided eye contact altogether. I could almost hear their thoughts. "She's the one who exposed them. She brought them down. For years I had been the quiet one, the one who smiled through rumors, who carried groceries in silence while others judged the cracks in my life. But today, I walked tall. I didn't rush. I bought fruit, paid in cash, counted the change slowly. Every simple act felt like a declaration. I survived your lies. Still, pride has its shadow. On the way home, I passed the newspaper stand again. My daughter's name wasn't printed, but her husband's initials blazed bold across the front page. "Officials suspect internal collusion." The word collusion hit hard. She'd married him young, believed in him blindly. Exposure had freed me, but it had destroyed her. That night I sat near the window, the flicker of the TV lighting the room. The news anchor was still talking about the case, his tone now confident, like the world had always known. That's the thing about truth, it makes everyone act like they saw it coming. I poured myself a cup of tea and stared at the reflection in the dark glass. I could see my own face beside the anchor's, two worlds colliding. My voice might have been quiet, but the evidence had spoken louder than any accusation ever could. Michael sent a message. They're panicking. The husband's accounts are frozen, and his business partners are cutting ties. I typed back. Then it begins. Around midnight, the journalist called again. They're denying everything, he said, claiming the paperwork was doctored. You'll probably receive a formal summons soon. Don't panic, it's procedure. Let them summon, I said. They can't rewrite the truth. When I hung up, I watched the TV one last time before turning it off. The screen went black, and for a moment, I saw only my reflection again, older, steadier, unafraid. The street outside was quiet, but not empty. Change was moving through it, silent as a verdict waiting to be read. Then the summons arrived. They called it a civil dispute. I called it theft. The courthouse was colder than I remembered. The air carried the faint mix of old paper and perfume, a strange reminder that justice and vanity often shared the same space. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands clasped tight around the silver bracelet I'd once sold, then bought back with the settlement from my frozen account. Full circle, I thought. The cost of truth had never been just money. Across the aisle, my daughter sat beside her husband. She didn't look up, not once. I wondered if she'd practiced that, how to face the public without showing shame. The room buzzed softly, whispers slipping through rows of spectators who had come to watch a family crumble in daylight. The gavel struck once. The echo spread through the chamber like a warning. The judge adjusted her glasses and spoke evenly. "This is not a criminal trial," she said. "It's a civil hearing regarding misappropriated funds and emotional distress." Emotional distress. Such a clean term for the kind of nights I'd lived through. Michael leaned toward me. "Stay calm," he murmured. "The evidence speaks for itself." I nodded. My throat was dry. The court clerk rolled a small player onto the desk, the same one I'd used when I recorded my daughter's visit. The judge gestured toward it. "We'll listen to the submitted recording now." The first sound was the click of a teacup, then her voice, steady, polite, pretending love. "Let's fix this, Mom." And then, the line that changed everything. "Dad said it's safer if she disappears quietly." Gasps spread through the courtroom. My daughter flinched. Her lawyer stood quickly, objecting, saying it was manipulated audio. The judge raised her hand. "Overruled. We'll allow it." I didn't move. I watched the truth play out in sound. The echo filled every corner of the room, touching even those who came for gossip. You could feel the shift, how quickly sympathy travels once proof arrives. The husband's lawyer began his cross. "You're implying intent from a conversation taken out of context," he said. "I'm not implying anything," I answered. "I'm proving what they did." He frowned. "Do you understand the reputational damage you've caused your own family?" I looked at him. "They caused it. I revealed it." There was silence then, thick and suffocating. My daughter looked at me for the first time in months. Her eyes were red, rimmed with anger, maybe guilt. I couldn't tell which. The judge spoke again. "The evidence presented is sufficient to establish misuse of funds and coercive behavior." She paused. "The court orders immediate restitution. All shared assets are to be frozen until repayment is completed." The words landed like iron. My daughter's husband lowered his head. She whispered something to him, too quiet to hear. Then, like a child scolded in front of neighbors, she covered her face and started crying. Outside the window, reporters were already waiting, their cameras aimed toward the doors, hungry for the image of broken dignity. The same neighbors who had once envied her luxury would now whisper about justice instead. Michael gathered the documents, sliding them neatly into a folder. "You did it," he said. No, I replied. The law did. Finally. I stood slowly, feeling the weight lift. Not joy, not revenge, just release. Years of silence, of doubt, had turned into a single, verifiable fact. Proof doesn't heal, but it steadies the heart. As the crowd began to disperse, I glanced at my daughter one last time. She wouldn't look at me. Her hands trembled as she gripped her purse. For a second, I thought she might speak, apologize, maybe explain. But she didn't. Instead, she turned toward the door, her heels clicking fast on the marble floor. The judge was still reading the final conditions of the verdict when it happened. She stood abruptly, knocking over her chair, and ran out before the verdict finished. Sometimes, judgment doesn't wear a robe. It walks the same streets you do, carrying groceries and memories, pretending everything is normal. That morning, the sky looked ordinary, but nothing about the day was. News of the verdict had spread through the town faster than rumor ever could. Every window seemed to know my name, and every door carried a whisper of what my daughter had done. I went to the market late, hoping to avoid eyes, but the world has a way of keeping witnesses close when truth is raw. The hum of voices followed me as I picked up a bag of rice, a carton of milk, and 2 apples. Simple things, the kind that used to fill our dinners when the family was whole. The plastic bag rustled against my hand, loud enough to draw glances. She was there, standing by the notice board outside the store. Her coat was wrinkled, her face pale. For a moment, I thought she might walk away. Instead, she stepped forward. "Mom," she said softly, "please talk to me." I didn't answer. Not yet. I looked at her, this woman who once laughed in my kitchen while balancing bills and recipes, now trembling like a stranger. Around us, people slowed their steps, but didn't stop completely. They pretended to check prices, to tie shoelaces, to linger near the entrance. But they were listening. Everyone was. She took another step closer. "They're saying terrible things about me," she whispered. "That I stole, that I lied. You could tell them it wasn't all me. You could fix this." I stayed still. The wind carried her words into the circle of silence between us. "Fix this?" I said finally. "You can't fix what you built on lies." Her eyes filled, the way they used to when she was caught sneaking money from my purse years ago. Back then, I forgave her before she even said sorry. Today, forgiveness felt too expensive to give away. A woman from across the street called out, voice trembling but clear. "Why did you steal from your mother?" The question wasn't cruel. It was simple, human, devastating. My daughter turned toward the voice. "It wasn't like that," she stammered. "You don't understand." But they did. Everyone did. Truth needs no translation when it's lived out loud. The crowd didn't shout. They didn't mock her. They just looked, each gaze a small mirror of consequence. She broke down in the middle of the street, hands shaking, words falling apart. "I didn't mean to ruin everything," she said. "It got out of control." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But control was the first thing she traded for greed. One man near the bakery muttered, "We all lose things, but not like this." Another woman whispered, "You can't undo what's done." Their voices folded into the air, blending with the rustle of plastic bags and the clinking of loose change at the cash counter. It wasn't anger. It was something heavier, collective disappointment. I spoke quietly, but it carried. "You wanted them to believe a lie. Now they believe the truth instead." She covered her face, shaking her head. "You hate me." "No," I said. "I don't hate you. I just stopped protecting you from yourself." That sentence seemed to end everything. She looked around, at the faces she once smiled at the corner where she used to buy flowers on Sundays. She turned and walked away, her steps uneven. The grocery bag slipped from her hand halfway down the street, spilling apples across the pavement. No one picked them up. I stayed where I was, holding my own bag tighter. The weight felt balanced for the first time in years. By evening, the neighborhood had returned to normal rhythms: children playing, shopkeepers counting cash, neighbors exchanging polite nods. But something invisible had shifted. The lie that once protected her was gone, and in its place stood a silence everyone respected. 3 days later, word spread that she'd left town. No forwarding address, no goodbye, just absence, a kind that feels cleaner than half-truths. I walked past the notice board again that week. Someone had pinned a clipping from the newspaper. Restitution completed. Case closed. The paper fluttered slightly in the breeze, soft but unyielding. I looked at it for a long moment, then turned toward home. For the first time, no one stared. No one whispered. Justice had moved on, but peace still felt unfinished. Her room smelled of perfume and betrayal. It was faint, the kind that lingers even after years, mixed with the dust of what used to be laughter. The curtains still carried her favorite color, pale blue, and for a second I almost expected her to walk in, asking for help finding a missing earring. But the room was silent, too clean, too final. I stood by the doorway, unsure if I was trespassing in a memory or reclaiming it. The sunlight slanted across the dresser, catching on the old perfume bottle she'd left behind. I picked it up. The glass was cold. The scent, floral, artificial, familiar, filled the air just long enough to pull me back to a time when she still called me Mom, without bitterness. I began cleaning, not because it needed it, but because it was something to do. Dusting shelves, folding bed sheets, touching traces of the child she once was. Every object told a small story: a bracelet from graduation, a ticket stub from a concert, the corner of a photograph peeking out from an envelope. I opened it carefully. The picture showed her at 12, grinning with missing teeth, holding a handmade card that said, "One day, I'll make you proud." On the back was her handwriting, uneven but eager. "Love you forever, Mom." It hit harder than any verdict. My hands shook. I sat down on the edge of her bed, holding the photo like it might dissolve if I blinked. I'd waited for justice, and I got it. The court froze her accounts. The public turned its eyes. The law acknowledged what I'd endured. But sitting there, surrounded by the ghosts of who she'd been, I realized justice doesn't restore warmth. It only stops the bleeding. The clock near the window ticked toward 6. The sound filled the space where her voice once lived. I leaned back and looked around, posters half peeled, a lamp without a bulb, drawers half empty. Every missing thing had a story of departure behind it. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Michael. "It's done," he said. "The funds are back in your account. You'll see them by morning." "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded distant, even to me. "You should feel proud," he added. "Maybe someday," I replied. After the call, I checked my bank app out of habit. The balance was higher than I'd seen in years. The money was proof, yes, but not closure. You can recover dollars, not trust. I placed the photo back inside the envelope and found a small folded note beneath it. The paper had yellowed, the ink fading at the edges. It read, "Mom, please don't give up on me. I'll fix everything." I stared at the words for a long time. Maybe she'd written it after our last fight. Maybe she never meant to send it. Either way, it was the truest thing I'd seen in months. I put the note in my folder with the legal documents, right beside the receipts, the signed orders, the copies of the transfers. Not as evidence, but as balance. One for the law, one for love. Quiet accounting, the kind that doesn't appear on paper, but lives in your chest. Outside, the evening light shifted from gold to gray. I sat near the window, the air still carrying that ghost of perfume. Across the street, children laughed, running home with candy bags. Life had continued without permission. I whispered, "I hope you're somewhere safe." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it wasn't hate either. It was something in between, something survivable. When I finally stood up, I closed the window, folded the bedsheets again, and turned off the light. The room felt lighter, like it had released something. I walked down the hall, the floorboards creaking under my steps. I thought I'd left grief behind in that courtroom, but it had followed me home, quiet and watchful. Then the phone rang again. It was her voice, trembling for the first time. I almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar, but something in me knew. I stood by the kitchen window, phone in hand, frozen. Outside, the streetlights flickered against the glass. The house felt too quiet for what was about to happen. When I pressed accept, there was a long pause before she spoke. "Mom," she whispered. The word carried the weight of years, broken trust, courtroom echoes, late-night regret. I closed my eyes. "I'm here," I said. Her breath hitched. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't even know who I was anymore. He's gone. The house is gone. I lost everything." For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator, steady and indifferent. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of everything we hadn't said when we should have. "I didn't want money," she continued. "I just wanted to matter. Every time I failed, I thought success could hide it. He made me believe that taking was the same as winning." "You believed him because it was easier than believing me," I said quietly. She let out a broken laugh. "I did. God, I did." The line went quiet again. I heard her swallow hard, and when she spoke, her voice cracked. "I think about what I did every night. About how proud you must have been when I was little, and how I turned that pride into shame. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to hear you breathe. I needed to know I didn't erase myself completely." I looked at the note I'd found days ago, the one that said, "Mom, one day I'll make you proud." It was still lying on the counter, beside the unpaid utility bill and a grocery receipt. Life had gone on, line by line. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I can't pretend nothing happened. The truth doesn't vanish because we start crying." "I know," she whispered. "I'm trying to live with it. I'm trying to fix what's left." She told me about the small apartment she'd rented, the part-time job sorting invoices at a local store. She said she hadn't touched a credit card in months. "I even pay cash now," she added softly, like confession was currency. "Every dollar feels heavier when it's earned." That made me pause. Maybe she finally understood the kind of value that isn't printed on paper. "Can I see you?" she asked after a while. "Just once, no cameras, no apologies, just you and me." I gripped the phone tighter. "Not yet," I said. "You can't rebuild what you broke by walking back through the same door." She exhaled slowly. "Then how do I start?" "By staying where you are, by keeping your word, by letting truth grow without forcing it to bloom overnight." She was silent again. I could hear her crying quietly, trying not to make sound. I didn't interrupt. Letting her cry felt kinder than pretending to comfort her. "I kept that bracelet," she said after a minute. "The one you gave me at graduation. It's all I took when I left. I wear it every day now. Not as memory, more like a promise." I didn't answer. My eyes drifted to the old photograph still on the shelf. In it, she was smiling, sunlight on her face, future, unbroken. "Mom," she said finally, "do you think there's a version of us that survives this?" "There's only the version we earn," I replied. The clock on the wall read 8:47. The night had settled deep, and the world outside had grown quiet. I could hear the faint sound of traffic, distant and fading. I knew she was waiting for me to say something soft, something like, "Come home." But I'd learned that love without boundaries is just surrender in disguise. "I hope you learn truth before pride," I said. "If you do, then maybe one day we'll start again." Her voice steadied. "I will, I promise. I'll call again tomorrow." "Take your time," I said. "Don't rush healing. It isn't a race." There was another pause. I could almost hear her nod through the line. "Tomorrow," she repeated. "I'll come anyway." The call ended. The house was silent again, but this time it didn't feel empty. I set the phone down and looked out the window. The lights outside flickered once more, then steadied, as if waiting for what tomorrow would bring. The same steps that saw her leave now saw her return. It was late afternoon, the kind of golden hour that makes old paint look forgiving. I stood inside, watching through the small window as she climbed the path. Each footstep sounded careful, measured, as if she feared the ground might remember the last time she walked away. When the doorbell rang, I didn't move right away. The kettle on the stove had just started to hum, its low sound filling the silence I'd grown used to. After everything that had happened, I thought the sound of a doorbell might feel like intrusion, but it didn't. It felt like punctuation, something that was supposed to come eventually. I opened the door. She was there, holding an envelope and a small paper receipt. Her face looked older, not by years, but by weight. "I didn't know if you'd answer," she said. "I almost didn't," I replied. She held out the envelope. "It's not much, but it's honest." Inside was a copy of a bank transfer receipt. A small amount, far from what she owed, but more than I expected. Her voice trembled. "I started working at the bookstore near the station. I wanted to send it earlier, but I didn't know if you'd accept it." I nodded. "It's not enough," I said. Then I softened. "But it's a start." She smiled faintly, as if those words gave her permission to breathe. "I didn't come for forgiveness," she said. "I came to return what I could, and to tell you I'm learning." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The evening air carried a faint chill through the doorway, the kind that makes warmth inside feel earned. Then I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. The same living room that once held shouting now felt quiet in a new way. She looked around carefully, her eyes pausing on the family photo still hanging crooked above the fireplace. "You kept it," she whispered. "I did," I said. "Some memories shouldn't be erased, just understood differently." She sat at the table where we once fought over unpaid bills and broken promises. I poured tea into 2 chipped mugs, the same ones we'd used years ago. The steam rose slowly between us, blurring her face for a second, then clearing again. She glanced at the note I'd placed near the sugar bowl, the one that read, "Mom, one day I'll make you proud." Her hand trembled. "I can't believe you still have that." "Some lies you forget," I said quietly. "But truth, even when written by a child, deserves keeping." We didn't talk about the trial, or the neighbors, or the money. There was no speech of forgiveness, no tidy ending. Just tea, sips between silences that didn't hurt anymore. Outside, the street filled with the familiar rhythm of evening life. Footsteps, children calling, a car door closing somewhere down the block. A few neighbors walked past and glanced toward the open window. One nodded politely, maybe in recognition, maybe in quiet approval. She noticed. "They all know, don't they?" "Yes," I said, "but knowing isn't the same as judging." She looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen in years, tired but honest. "I'll send more each month," she said. "I've made a plan." "You don't owe me installments," I replied. "You owe yourself peace." She smiled, a real one this time. "I'm trying." We finished our tea in silence. The sun dipped lower, brushing the room with soft amber. When she stood to leave, she hesitated near the door. "Can I come again?" "Not yet," I said gently. "Let time do some of the talking first." She nodded and stepped outside. I watched her walk down the same path she'd once stormed across in anger. Now her shoulders were lighter. The envelope was gone from her hand, replaced by something else. Acceptance, maybe. I closed the door slowly. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. The candle on the windowsill flickered, throwing a faint glow across the room. For the first time in years, the house didn't echo with loss. It simply breathed. Silence became peace. Did you enjoy this story? Tell me which city you're listening from. I read every comment. If the story touched you, you can support the channel with a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this every day. Your encouragement really helps. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what moment stayed with you. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's plenty more on the channel as well. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next life story, with respect and gratitude.